Hello, and welcome back to Dispatch Tea and Therapy. I'm Lucinda, and before I begin today's episode, I want to acknowledge something. I did not end up doing Storytime Tuesday this week, or my planned Saturday edition either. What can I say? Content creation is harder than I imagined, and as much as I can hardly believe I'm calling myself a content creator, the proof is in my already uploaded 4 videos and my lovely 22 early adopters, aka subscribers. So again, first, a big thank you to all of you who are liking, subscribing, and sharing, and reaching out to tell me what's resonating with you. You bring me so much joy, and it makes this journey as uplifting as I imagined it could be. I'm also excited about what's coming. I already have a friend who's a police officer who is eager to come on and discuss first responder issues. So we'll be talking soon about how to make that happen and what it will look like. Before we jump in today, I do want to say, though, that I'm sorry for saying I'd have content and then not having it. I am still figuring out the sweet spot of how to do this passion project and balance all of my other commitments. My hope is that with the upcoming couple of weeks I have in my school break between spring and summer quarters, that I'll have a chance to record several episodes in advance so I can stay on schedule. That's important to me both for keeping my word and for keeping myself accountable. That said, I'm moving forward. This Saturday will be our first Saturday edition, and next Tuesday will be the debut of Storytime Tuesday. With that said, we're going to go ahead and dig right into today's wellness topic, which is boundaries and therapy frameworks when we're talking about especially workplace boundaries, but boundaries at any time. We're diving into this topic because it's necessary and it's uncomfortable. And I'm not talking about boundaries that are rigid and unbending. I am talking about boundaries that are loving, affirming spaces that let us both be compassionate and clear. So let's first talk about boundaries through a mental health lens. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, and dialectical behavioral therapy, DBT. CBT teaches us how our thoughts influence our feelings and our behaviors. It helps us challenge unhelpful beliefs like I can't say no, or I shouldn't say no, or people won't like me if I set a boundary. DBT adds tools like emotional regulation and interpersonal effectiveness to help us communicate our needs while maintaining relationships that are working. Both of them are powerful frameworks for learning to set and hold boundaries. And I'm going to be honest and a little vulnerable again. Setting boundaries did not come naturally to me. I did not used to be good at it. It's something I've become very good at because I now recognize it as a very vital part of my mental health toolkit. But I grew up in a home where domestic violence, alcoholism, and other dark, traumatic shit was constantly present. And like a lot of people raised in unpredictable environments, I learned early that keeping the peace, being helpful, being agreeable, keeping myself small was the safest thing I could do. That wasn't a personality trait. That was my nervous system doing what it thought would keep me alive. But those strategies didn't disappear when I became an adult. For most of my life, I didn't realize that some of the ways I showed up in relationships, especially the urge to keep the peace, fix or smooth things over, were actually trauma responses. And those might sound like they're the same thing, but they're actually different expressions of the same survival instinct. Keeping the peace meant avoiding conflict entirely, staying quiet, going along to get along, not rocking the boat, however you want to phrase that. Fixing meant taking responsibility for things that weren't mine, jumping into action to make sure everyone else was okay. Smoothing things over meant managing other people's emotions and downplaying tension, sugarcoating my own truth, trying to make discomfort disappear. And at the time, I thought I was just being helpful. I thought I was being nice, being easy to get along with. But really, I was still trying to stay safe. I was moving through the world with fear, not of physical danger necessarily anymore, but of rejection, disconnection, or just not being enough. Patterns that once kept me safe had simply become how I coped. And all of those responses are what are called Fawn responses. Now, everybody's heard of fight, flight, and freeze as trauma responses, but there are actually two additional trauma responses that deserve equal attention, and that's fawn and flop. Now, these terms might not be familiar to you, they may be new to you, and that's okay. Fawn and flop have only recently become more visible in mental health conversations, even though the behaviors themselves have always been with us. Fawn was popularized by trauma therapist Pete Walker in the 2010s through his work on complex PTSD. It describes the survival strategy of appeasing others, people-pleasing, over-accommodating, shape-shifting to avoid conflict and stay safe. Now, flop, sorry, I've got a terribly little itch there. You didn't need to know that. And I'm not cutting this because I've already recorded this like 5 times. Flop, let's get back to that. I'm flopping right now. Flop means what happens when the nervous system is so overwhelmed it shuts down entirely. It's like a deeper kind of freeze. It's more numbness, disassociation, or helplessness. This response is rooted in a polyvagal theory developed by Dr. Stephen Porges, which explains how our nervous system shifts between states of mobilization, like fight or flight, safety or shutdown, in response to danger. It's also central to what's called somatic psychology, which focuses on how trauma lives in the body, not just in our thoughts, but in our breath, in the tension that we carry, our posture, and our felt sense, how we feel things, how things are feeling in our body. So let's break down the entire trauma response. We know that for fight, that means confronting the threat head on, usually with anger, aggression, control. Flight means escaping, overworking, anxiety, or perfectionism. Freeze means getting stuck, indecision, disassociation, shutting down. Fawn, appeasing, people-pleasing, conflict avoidance, over-functioning. And flop, collapsing, emotional numbness, disconnection, helplessness. People-pleasing, or the fawn reaction as a child, is the one that shaped me the most, though I have experienced fight, flight, and freeze as well, and I'll talk about them another time. Over time, that fawn response became what I now call being a recovering people pleaser, because yes, we can recover and we can get better. And that happened through therapy, and it was not easy to come to grips with being a people pleaser. Let me just tell you, it's not always easy. It's difficult to confront that because it doesn't feel good to say that you're a people pleaser until you understand why. But the way that it would show up for me is that I would say yes when I should have said no, when I meant no, when I wanted to say no. I felt driven to fix what other people had broken. I felt responsible for other people's emotions, believing if they were okay, maybe I would be too. And I lost myself in the process. Learning this language changed everything for me. It gave me permission to stop asking, what's wrong with me? And start asking, what happened to me? So how does that relate to relationships with coworkers, acquaintances, friends, etc.? Let's start here. Not everyone you work with is your friend. That doesn't mean that you're enemies, but it does mean that you're not friends. You don't hang out outside of work. And guess what? That's okay. In our line of work, we often hear we're family. How many times have we heard that? We're one big family. But the truth is, we're not. Some people will form families, and it will feel like family with some people. You'll find your tribe, I've no doubt. But ultimately, it is a workplace, a professional workplace. And you can have friendly, respectful, even caring relationships, and I hope that you do, with your coworkers. Have fun with them, enjoy them. That does not automatically make them friends. And recognizing that distinction can save you from burnout and, frankly, misplaced trust. Let me give you an example. I'm going to make up a friend named Daryl. Not even a friend, I apologize. If I casually call someone a friend, just because I get along with him professionally at work, I am assigning a level of closeness that might not actually exist. I'm also presenting him as someone worthy of being a friend, and I can't vouch for that. This can lead to an emotional overinvestment, blurred boundaries, and frankly, hurt feelings when expectations aren't met. If I'm introducing him as a friend, because that's what I think he is, but he thinks of me as an acquaintance or a coworker, perfectly valid, who's going to get hurt there? Not him with boundaries, me. This idea is also echoed in the book I mentioned before, The Resilient Dispatcher, which talks about how work culture, especially in these types of environments, can pressure us to overextend ourselves in the name of loyalty. But true resilience includes knowing your limits. CBT reminds us to challenge automatic thoughts like, I have to be friends with everyone to feel safe or accepted. DBT helps us get clear about our needs and how to express them effectively without guilt. Try this reflection someday. Who in your life is a true friend? Someone who shows up, listens, and respects your boundaries. And who might be a kind coworker, an acquaintance, or a professional peer. Defining that difference doesn't diminish the relationship, it just clarifies it. So let's talk for a second about social media. Social media is another sphere where boundaries matter, especially in 911. What you post isn't just seen by friends, it's seen by coworkers, management, and sometimes even the public or the media. One screenshot can live forever. That doesn't mean you can't be online, it just means you need to be intentional. Ask yourself, is this post venting or connecting? And full disclosure, I have not always been good at this. I got rid of social media after my mom died for 2 years for my own mental health. I eased back into it, and several months ago, I got rid of it again because I don't handle boundaries well on social media. That's just me. I'm not suggesting that should be you. I am suggesting you ask yourself, again, is this post venting or is it connecting? Am I sharing something that aligns with my values and my role, or am I outsourcing validation? Being selective about who you add, what you post, and what groups you engage in is not about being secretive or cutting yourself off. It's a mental health strategy. It is professional self-care. There are some really fantastic 911 support communities out there. Find the ones that give you energy instead of draining it. The key is conscious sharing, not oversharing. And remember, saying no to a friend request or avoiding oversharing doesn't, again, mean that you are hiding. It just means that you're honoring your own bandwidth. Everybody doesn't need to know everything about your life. I also want to talk about one last thing, and that is avoiding the 911 bubble. This is a boundary that is rarely discussed. It is the boundary between your work identity and your whole self. When your only friends are in 911, when your hobbies revolve around shift work, and your conversations are all work-related, it becomes an insulated 911 bubble. And bubbles can become cages very quickly. You deserve a life outside of the headset. While the job is noble and I understand the heady power of being in a job that is life-saving, building a life outside of the headset is what DBT calls building a life worth living. And that means friendships, hobbies, rest, and community outside of the comm room. Find a book club, join a hiking group, take an art class, anything that reminds you you are more than what you do. If you don't know where to start small. Think about something that brought you joy before the job became your identity. Try it again. Even once a month is going to help you. That is a form of boundary too, protecting time for yourself. I want to go back to the quote that started it all for me. And it's a quote about boundaries. It says, boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously. I first heard that line while watching Brené Brown. I told you you'd hear about her again. She has a series on Netflix, called Atlas of the Heart, based on her book, Atlas of the Heart, which I also have. And that quote by Prentis Hemphill really hit something deep for me. Now, Brené Brown was unpacking language around vulnerability and connection. And when she shared that quote, I'm getting slurry here, I apologize. It felt like someone had finally put into words what I'd been trying to understand for years. Boundaries are not rejection. They weren't cruelty. They were love, a map, a reclamation of myself within the relationship. Prentis Hemphill's work, especially in spaces centering healing from a systemic and personal trauma, reminds us that boundaries are not just interpersonal. They are political, spiritual, embodied. They're how we stay whole without disappearing. And as Brené Brown emphasizes in both the Atlas book and the series, we can't stay grounded in empathy without clear boundaries. Empathy without limits becomes self-abandonment. Love without limits becomes codependence. So when I say this quote cracked something open for me, I mean it. It helped me stop projecting and it helped me stop apologizing for protecting my peace. It helped me start practicing boundaries as a form of radical integrated love. When I first started setting boundaries, it still felt kind of mean, like I was disappointing people. But the truth is, I was finally showing up for myself. And the people who loved me, who really loved me, not only understood that, they celebrated it. They were waiting for me to show up as my full and authentic self. CBT helped me reframe my fears from, if I say no, they'll stop liking me, to, if they only like me when I say yes, that isn't love. DBT is teaching me how to stay calm and clear when I feel the urge to over-explain, which I still do, but not in the same way. I'm just a talker. Again, I want to re-emphasize that boundaries are not selfish. They are just a reclamation. They are a way to have a sort of homecoming to yourself. So I will leave you with this. The next time you feel that familiar urge to say yes when you mean no, pause, breathe, ask yourself, what am I trying to protect right now? Excuse me. Excuse me. What am I trying to protect right now? My peace or their comfort? And then give yourself permission to choose you. Getting all froggy. Too much talking. Excuse me. Okay, so that's going to be the end here pretty soon. Just again, we talked today about exploring boundaries as a tool for self-care, emotional resilience, and again, professional sustainability. Whether you're learning to say no, to speak up, or to log off, God, you are doing brave work. Please drop a comment or let me know how you're redefining boundaries in your world, and I will see you tomorrow for Poetry Thursday, where we will slow down and let the words do some healing work. Until then, protect your peace, set those boundaries, stay grounded, and take care of yourselves.